the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live every first Monday, the first Monday of every month. My name is Andre. I'm with the USA Emergency Broadcasting Network, and I'm joined on the Zeta Report from Nancy Leader from Zeta Talk. Is that Nancy? Are you there? I'll get to that.
Hi. We have a very interesting subject. It's very close to my heart. It may not be interesting, but it's very important. You don't eat unless you have a garden, and you don't have a garden if you don't have seed, or know how to propagate your plants, because buy the seed packet, put it in the ground, you have something to eat that summer, it's all gone. Just wait. I'm going to tell you what to do. But before we jump into that, let me read our standard disclaimer. In partnership with USAEBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes, and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit zetatalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. Modern-day humans go to the store and pick up groceries like they are dropped from the sky. Always available, always fresh, a wonderful variety. How many of these foodstuffs require saving seed or propagation steps for the next year's crops as part of the process? Certainly pasta and cereal and bread. Well, that's from grains. Certainly salads and slaw and that bowl of steamed carrots or broccoli. Certainly potatoes in all its forms, fries, baked, mashed. Certainly those delicious fruits and berries. So if you find yourself unable to grocery shop and needing home gardens to grow your own food, just how much variety will you really have, or are you going to be stuck with weeds and bugs? That's the implicit threat. Propagating annuals like lettuce or corn or beans is relatively easy. Just set aside a portion of your crop for seed production, letting it fully mature, and collect the dry seeds. But half our food supply comes from biennials, like cabbage and onions and carrots, which insist on sleeping over during the dormant period before going to seed. The old root cellar concept comes into play. Some edibles only require establishing a perennial patch, like asparagus or berries or planting an apple tree. Reproduction by cloning or cuttings may even be necessary if all seeds are out of reach. But let's start with the easy ones. Corn kernels are perhaps the easiest to harvest. All one needs to do is let a couple stalks of corn live on past harvest time until the corn dries fully. The drier, the better. Farmers check their cornfields for this, as they don't want moldering corn in their silos, nor do they want the expense of drying it indoors. Corn is an easy plant to grow, fertilized by the wind which blows the pollen from the tassels down across the silk of neighboring corn plants. Corn is known as a feeder crop. It needs lots of fertilizer. This might be manure or ashes from a wood-burning stove, or I guess farmers use pee from the pig farms too. Just about anything, and they alternate. The farmers alternate their corn crops with bean crops like soy crops, because soy will bind oxygen to the soil, so it's available for the corn. So they suck it out, and bean crops put it back in. Perhaps the easiest garden veggie to grow are beans and legumes, and every culture has recipes for them. Delicious, satisfying, and a bit of protein, too. Once again, make sure the seeds you harvest are very dry. Allow the plant to literally die from old age to ensure maturity. One technique to get the very last bit of nutrition to the seeds is to hang the plants upside down. Pull it when it's ready to harvest. Pull it out of the ground, hang it up on your porch. I know it looks weird, but I've done it myself. I am telling you things that I have done in the first several years that I was here on the old homestead. So this drains the nutrients down into the seeds, the last little bit of goodness. Beans are a hot weather plant, and I have found that planting them when the soil is wet and cool will result in the bean plant, the seed, moldering in the ground. Nothing comes up. You gotta wait until it's hot and dry. Salad greens or veggies to stir, fry, or steam are also mostly annuals, meaning they go to seed in their first year. This category includes lettuce, spinach, bok choy, mustard greens, and kale. Always collect seed from your best plants, passing along their genetics in this way. I collected lettuce seed and found I had to pass down the rows and collect seed almost daily. Lettuce is among those plants that continually go to seed. One day you see a fluffy white flower with immature seeds within, and a couple days later the same flower is a puff of white floating off like little parachutes, carrying away the mature seeds in the wind. And I used to come home from work and just automatically go to the lettuce row, collect. Otherwise it was all gone. Spinach is a bisexual plant, meaning one must have male and female plants to produce fertile seeds. But the seeds are easy to locate and stay put until plucked off the seed stalk. As always, try not to harvest until the seed is mature and dry. Melons, squash, cucumbers, and pumpkin are all fruits. Their yellow flowers turn into a fruit after the flower has been fertilized. In these days when bee colonies can be killed off, allow all the other fertilizing insects to flourish. Ants, sweat bees, anything that is crawling or buzzing around, they are your friends. Winter squash and pumpkin are superior foods to store in a cool cellar. They last for months and months. When collecting seed from plants in this category, take from a very ripe fruit, almost to the rotting point. Rinse the pulp from the seeds, dry thoroughly, and store in a cool, dry place. It's very disheartening when you save your seed and you're sure you rinsed off the pulp and you're sure you dried it on a platter and you put it in a Ziploc bag and you go back to check on it a week later and it's covered with mold. You didn't get something right, So some of this you have to experience. Make your mistakes, get familiar with this. And it's the thing to do. I made plenty of mistakes. I learned from every one of my mistakes. Tomatoes and tomato sauces are so intrinsic to meals in so many cultures, they deserve their own spot on the seed-saving discussion, especially since effective seed-saving requires an odd practice. One must molder the seeds to rid the seeds of the slime that surrounds them inside the ripening tomato. But can't you just rinse off the slime? Apparently that won't work. If you try that, what you get is what looks like a dry tomato seed. It simply won't germinate because it says, no, too soon. I'm in the tomato right now. I have to wait until I fall down on the ground and molder, and then I'll germinate. So it refuses. Even rinsed and dried, the tomato seed still thinks that it's in the tomato. So one must put the slimy seeds into a bowl with a little water and let it sit until the bowl is covered with white mold, which apparently happens everywhere, universally. It certainly happened at my house. The slime is eaten by mold. Then rinse, letting the heavy mature seeds sink to the bottom of the bowl, and the chaff and the mold flows off the top of the bowl. It's essentially putting it under a slow-running stream of water. Sloshing around and around, and the bowl fills up, the little mature seeds drop to the bottom, you rinse off the top portion, and all the gunky stuff goes down the drain. And after a while, all you have is mature seeds and clear water. And then you put it into like you rinse it off and put it on a plate to dry, or you put it in, there you are, and those seeds will grow. Then dry and store for the next year. Strawberries also deserve a special mention because strawberry plants never die, and they never sleep. This is serious. They will grow and produce berries 24 hours every day if given light. Thus, that makes them ideal for indoor gardens. I live in Wisconsin, and the harsh winters did not kill my strawberry plants, which emerged in the spring, and we had plenty of strawberry farmers around here, too, so they don't die in the winter. Strawberries don't, in the frost. Strawberries also have multiple ways of reproducing. They produce runners, long vines with a little bitty strawberry plant at the end with little bitty roots, and it plunks down wherever it lands and starts a new strawberry plant. They seek to put down roots because they're already establishing them. But you can also establish a strawberry plant patch from seed. So, the bottom line with the runners, they wander about. If you have a strawberry patch, you're going to find those little strawberry plants everywhere. They go blink, and then the runner becomes a new plant, and then next year he produces runners, and blink, it's like octopuses or something like that. And it's a wonderful plant. It must be a gift. Strawberries are covered on the outside by little seeds. If in a warm, humid environment, these seeds will sprout while still on the strawberry. One can take a slice off a store-bought strawberry, lay that slice on some moist dirt, and voila, baby strawberry plants. So what are you waiting for? Start your indoor patch. What I am suggesting here is that it does so well indoors, and you should never be without. Get a strawberry plant, and or make a slice of strawberry to get the seeds. Put it on a little piece of soil because whatever it takes, you're going to find those little seedlings popping up. And practice. You'll find out what your mistakes are. You'll learn from your mistakes. Go for it. Potatoes also deserve a special mention, as what meal is complete without potatoes? Potatoes are usually grown from cutting up old potatoes that have been stored in the cool room, so that each eye on a potato has a portion of the potato to give it strength to grow. I have a bag of Idaho potatoes by my stove and often find the last potato already sprouting in the warm kitchen. They just don't wait to be asked. My grandmother used to plant her potato eyes on the riverbank down below along the Baraboo River. After the spring flooding went down, potatoes like a wet, rich soil. Potatoes can also be grown from the seed pods they produce. Dry the pods well and break them open to release the tiny seeds. Of course, this takes more time than planting potato eyes. If you want to get started, plant an eye in the house and try your hand at seed saving. That's another one. Now you've got some strawberry plants, and you've got a potato on your windowsill, on your porch, in your bedroom. Don't be shy. Get into it. Lysine-rich plants like Amaranth and Buckwheat also deserve a special mention, as growing them allows you to replace meat protein with plant protein. Amaranth and corn mixed together gives one the protein equivalent of red meat. Legume plants such as peas are also high in lysine. These plants are annuals, so one only needs to collect the seed and plant the next year. Buckwheat seed stays in the flower pod and is easy to collect, but with a warning, I grew plenty of it. The seeds are like a little triangle, and not just on the bottom, the part that would hit the floor, but it's got a point on the top, too. There is no way to position that seed on the floor that there isn't a spike aiming for your foot. Let me put it that way. Just look at the pictures. So if you step on that, it's like, hi-ya, very, very painful. So you have to be careful when you're shucking these seeds that you don't drop any on the floor and run around barefoot. You will regret it. The amaranth plant is entirely edible, and the leaves are just as nutritious as the seeds. The seed plumes shed seeds continuously, so most would be lost unless one goes down a row regularly and shakes the plume into an apron or sack. The tiny seeds are long-lived, an ancient South American plant which is a gift to mankind. This is another one, but a little hard to grow in the house. They're like 7 foot tall, and with these huge plumes covered with seeds. But the leaves, you could steam them. You eat the whole darn plant, apparently. Almost half of the vegetables we eat are not annuals. They are biennial seed producers, meaning they grow the first year, go dormant over what is assumed to be a winter, and then produce seed the second year. The cabbage family, like carrots, beets, and the onion family, including leeks, these are all biennials. This means covering the plant with straw if in a temperate climate that does not get a hard frost, or digging some seed stock plants up and storing them in a root cellar, hence the name root cellar. Seed production is prolific, so many plants are not needed. The plants so stored need the roots with some soil or sand around them, but do not need much vegetation above the roots. You cut off the leaves and stalks and that kind of thing. The term root cellar is old-fashioned from the days when seed collection was a family business or a family farm business. Everyone did it. The Amish today rely on cabbage as a staple, but using the basement or a cool room to store a harvest over the winter is likewise an old-fashioned concept. The modern shopper goes to the grocery store to buy spinach, pumpkin, apples, potatoes, and cabbage. The grocer ships these in from warehouses where they keep these items at a cool temperature. So if you have a cool room in your basement, same thing. Families would store their apple harvest, their pumpkins, their winter squash, like acorn squash, their potatoes. Yeah, it doesn't rot, and it just waits for you to get hungry and eat. Onions are a biennial, so must winter over for seed. Each onion will produce beautiful white flower balls that become seed pods. Just let dry and then shuck the little black seeds out. Leeks likewise are like that. Only the gypsy onion plant can winter over. I have both in my garden. Onion seed stalks and the flowers are just gorgeous white balls. They're like no flower is prettier. And gypsy onion does not really produce a flower. It, has a stalk that lobs over and falls, and wherever it touches the soil, that little ball at the end of that leaf becomes a new plant. So it needs help making a long distance. I'm not sure how that works. Probably animals pick it up and drop it. I'm not sure, but it will winter over. It's not a biennial. It produces little bitty onions that you can eat, so there you are, gypsy onion. Garlic has been domesticated for so long that its seed is often no longer viable. But garlic can produce black seeds from its flowers. An alternate means of propagating is reproduction from cloves. Plant one of those small cloves in the spring, and by late fall, that spot will have a garlic bunch, like 20 cloves and big ones and little ones and whatever. And that's how it's normally done, I think. I don't think they go from seed because that takes too much time, but you can do that. And certainly, it would be worthwhile having garlic seed on hand in case things go really wrong and bad. And now what do? You can't go to the store. Nobody has a garlic clove. Oh, no, I have seed. Well, conscientious planting, and now you have garlic again. All cabbage is biennial except for bok choy, the Chinese cabbage that is an annual. Heads of green cabbage, Brussels sprout, broccoli, cauliflower, these all must winter over. Bring a few healthy plants indoors with roots attached and cut back or prune the tops. Keep roots covered in a cool, dark place until spring. Transplant outside in the spring, and up will come the seed stalks with little yellow flowers. Harvest the pods when dry, putting inside a cloth bag to dry. Do not allow the seed pods to shatter and spill the seed. Of course, the plant is interested in propagating. It makes the seed and something comes along and moves it around and says, here we go, next year I got you. I've propagated, that's their motivation, but your motivation is to save that seed. Okay. Carrots, turnip, beets, and parsnip are root plants that are also biennials. Beets are particularly nutritious and are prolific seed producers. Radish also needs to winter over. When transplanting in the spring, make sure the entire root is covered. In other words, you take it out of the root cellar where you have it under sand or dirt or whatever to keep it from drying out too much. So you go outside and you have this thing that's a lot of roots hanging down. Well, dig a hole, put that in the hole, cover over well, and you don't want the roots exposed to the sun because, of course, that kills roots, So anyway, that's common sense, really. I'm preaching at you here. Other popular veggies that are biennial are the chards and celery. What have we not covered? Oh, yes, the perennials. Plants that do not die after a year like the annuals or die after their second year when they go to seed are called perennials, live forever. The rhubarb patch, famous for rhubarb pie, and the asparagus patch, horseradish, ginger root, and artichoke are all perennial once established. These roots do produce seed, but a gardener normally establishes a patch by getting a chunk of the plant, when well established, from a vendor or a neighbor. And we have asparagus patches, Cellars, farmers here. And you go up, and he goes out in the field, and he digs you something that's about 6 inches in diameter, a chunk of root, right? And puts it in a bag and charges, and you put that in your garden, and away you go. But I have a seed stock patch of asparagus that grows 6 foot tall, and people always say, "Aren't you going to cut that and eat that?" I said, "No, it's a seed bank. It's a seed bank." And yes, and then here's the little yellow and orange balls, later on, and I collect those and swish out the seeds, and there you go. So once you get an established asparagus patch, you are a seed bank for others. Easy, easy. Just let one of those, or a couple of those stalks go to seed instead of cutting to eat, and your neighbors will love you. Berry bushes like raspberry, blueberry, and blackberry are also perennial. They lob over branches that are called vines that will produce new plants where they touch the ground. Here we go again with the strawberry vines and the gypsy onion vines. Berry bushes are like that too, so that I have them along my yard and I have to go and cut them back, or they would just keep growing into my yard and I wouldn't have any yard after a bit. Thus, the infamous berry thicket. Aggressive pruning of deadwood is required to prevent a thicket from forming. The what produced in 1 year dies off, and it's the new stuff that was grown last year that becomes the producers this year. In other words, they have a biennial berry production, as far as 1 year I grow, the next year I produce berries, and then the next year I'm dead. And it's the dead stuff that produces the thicket, because it's got pickers in there. Watch your arm. Fruit trees like apple, peach, cherry, and plum can be established from seeds salvaged from the fruit sold at the grocer. You know, you eat a ripe peach and there's a seed in there. Well, don't throw it away. Plant it. You know, or you can buy young trees from a vendor. They're covered in flowers in the spring. Fruit trees are beautiful. In the spring, it's like, oh, the cherry blossoms of, you know, Washington, D.C. or Japan or whatever. And, of course, apple tree orchards are just gorgeous in the spring, too. Each flower becomes a fruit. Nut trees, likewise, can be established in this manner by letting each flower become a nut. If seed is no longer for sale and you need to start your garden, there is always cloning. This goes by many names, such as cuttings. To reproduce a grapevine, cut a stem and put the bottom part in water. Rooting solution helps to encourage this process, but technically, I don't think it's needed. In other words, the vine itself, or the the stem or the branch or whatever the heck the branch, it has some oomph in and of itself. It's like trees getting their leaves in the spring. Up comes the sap, so there's some sap in there. And as long as it has water, it's going to try to push down roots and suck it up, by the roots. Roots form on the bottom, and then the cutting is planted. Now, we have a Concord grapevine on my porch. It's over 100 years old, I'm not sure. Well, Concord grape grows from seed, but you have to generally have a grape seed go through the gut of a bird, and you have to go around and find their poop. So, in other words, I find little Concord grape plants, heather and non, in my yard or garden where the birds have pooped it out, but if I try to just, it's some acid in the stomach that eats away the slime, like the tomato slime or whatever. So I did a cutting, because I wanted the experience anyway, and gave it to a woman in Wisconsin who's a fan of Zeta Talk. And she said they put it in the water. They had rooting solution, and it didn't seem to be doing the root thing. But after a year, they planted it out there, and weren't sure what was going to happen. They assumed it was next year. Well, look at that, we've got a grapevine. So it worked eventually. To take a little time. One can start a strawberry patch from a slice of strawberry, or get seed from some green onions and place them in water and get the roots to come down again. Or do that with a piece of carrot, a clove garlic, with its roots part just touching the water. Oh, here we go with roots. Or a slice of potato with an eye on it. Yep, here we go. From this, a living plant and seed production can start. Now, what I'm describing here is the desperation of somebody in the city who says, we need gardens, and we have a bit of soil here and there from the houseplants, but I don't have any seed, and what am I? Well, do you have a potato? Do you have a strawberry? Do you have a green onion or a carrot in your, well, then you can produce seed. I'm not talking about eating the thing. I'm talking about setting it up so that it's getting roots down there, and that up it comes, and now it thinks it should go to seed because it's a biennial, which green onions and carrots, etc. are. So this is a way of salvaging, if you're really in desperate straits. So, this is the end of my lecture on propagation, which I'm sure you're going to have to go through for a few dozen times to absorb it all. Do get started. Do, and chat about this with other people who are struggling to get started. And you will learn from your experience, and besides, it's fun. It's just fun. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the new Madrid, how it keeps creeping closer and closer. But I'm going to give Andre a chance to jump in and say something, because I don't let him.
Okay.
Otherwise. You're a gardener, Andre?
I am, and I've been working on during this lockdown period, I'm not working, but I'm actually doing some other stuff at my house, which requires a lot of time and projects with computers and stuff. But I was harvesting weeds yesterday in my garden. because of all the rains, I'm like, okay, yeah. And then I got an email from the person that manages the garden complex. They're like, yeah, you might want to come down here. I'm like, okay. But a couple of quick questions. I do a lot of seed saving myself because I'm a single individual. I don't have a family, but it's one of those things where I want to have the practice and the land available. So I do a community garden. I part of your local county program, and so I rent a proper plot of land there. My question is, with the broccoli and the cabbages, with their biennial structure, after the second year, is that plant on its way out? I mean,
they die.
Is it like the berry plants? Is like the first year is for propagation, second year is for reproduction, and third year you're done?
And what plant was this? Not
the broccoli and the cabbage.
The broccoli,
family?
yes. To my experience and my understanding, they die after the second year. It's like so much of life on Earth. The insects. They mate, and the female eats the male. To get her eggs a good start, and everybody dies. In order to propagate on. Yeah, they die the second year. Yep. And annuals die the first year. That's it.
Right.
Gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they produce their seed or whatever they have to get to the next season the first year.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's right. I've had really good luck with the berry families, the blackberries and the raspberries. There's a 3-year cycle for the raspberries. So first year cane, and second year produce, and third year I don't know what they do. They kind of just don't produce the third year. But if you don't take out those canes in the thicket, it does slow down the production because they're not getting enough light. Plus, it's just a mess. You're going to get cut up. They've got thorns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at the fall, I trim back the berry plants after they've, around the frost time. You don't want to cut them too early because it hurts them, but you can prune them when they're dormant. So that's when I do my pruning, is in the fall, and then in the spring I come back and make sure that everything's all set up properly and redo it.
Yeah. I generally go in and in the spring you can see what died, it's third year dead, and cut it out, and so all I have is the canes that were produced the year before that are ready to go berry, but it can thicken out and get to be a thicket and a real mess, and then you can't get your hand in there. The nicest berries are like 6 inches down, but you have to bleeding scratches to even get there to it. So they are a high maintenance item. Berry patches are. Strawberries are not high maintenance. Yeah.
No. One thing I will say with the raspberry plant that I've done with the research that I've found is the raspberry patch. The dead canes you want to get out of there, because I think there's some sort of bacteria that starts with the dead canes if they lay down, if they're not cleared out after a short time, especially if a wet environment. I don't know if it's a mold or a bacteria, but it's good to clean out the thicket. Wear gloves, long sleeves,
Wear gloves.
Chainmail, whatever.
Yep.
That's all I have for questions, Nancy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The birds get in there. They get in there, and then they they eat, and through their digestive tracts they prep that seed and they disseminate. And the berry patches like the birds, but they don't like the people.
That's why the berries are way down deep in there.
Yeah.
Birds can get them.
So true. Yes, here we are, another spring, and it's wonderful to see, So I remember, I don't garden anymore because I'm 80. I'm 79 going on 80, and I just loved it. I remember when I was living in California or elsewhere, and I didn't have that rich black soil that is in Wisconsin, and it's all, the red clay soil, or I'm living in an apartment in California or whatever, and I just longed for it. And when I got here, I just went berserk. Running the seed team, trying to get people to and growing and packaging and distributing seed packets, but at least I have the experience and I can speak to it. So I make a show like this, it's good to have
there's a lot of
experience.
research. I mean, you can do only so much research with gardening. You kind of have to get in and do it. You have to make some mistakes. And that's why we've been stressing on this for how long now? Almost 6.5 years. I mean, we're talking about seed saving off and on for all of that time in gardening and, you know, being sustainable. The thing is, like, you're going to have to do it. It's not something you can just turn a light switch on. It's like, you know, call Amazon's DIY starter kit for gardening. And it's like, they'll send you seeds, but you still have to do it, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's right.
The only way to get good at it is to make a bunch of mistakes.
And you do. I remember when we had the worm beds, you know, and we were going to produce. They put nitrogen. They eat the green compost and they put the nitrogen back into the soil, right? They make soil, right? So we got all these red wigglers and we had all this compost, this green compost, and it just seemed to stall. And the worms kind of died of old age and they didn't. I thought, what's wrong? And I checked with my worm experts, you know, over there in Australia, who had worm beds that they produced for fertilizer because they said you water these worm beds and you get the best liquid fertilizer on earth. And we found that we could use that for our hydroponic beds. It was as good as the store-bought hydroponic nutrient solution. It was better. And I say this not from an attitude, but we actually checked it out. We ran a 3-way, you know. All right, fish pond water, worm bed nutrient solution, hydroponic store-bought nutrient solution, and I counted blossoms and I counted leaves, and this was very scientific. Anyway, what was wrong with my worm beds? And the guy said, "Oh, are you collecting the egg sacs?" I said, "What?" And he said, "You know, the egg sacs are you know where it breaks down, and that's where the fertilizer is, you know, but if you let it lay around in the compost, this is a natural prophylactic for the worms." They say, "Wait a minute, we're going to have a population explosion and we'll all die, so don't make any more eggs." No, stop. And of course, you don't have any more eggs, you don't have those tiny little baby worms, and eventually the whole culture dies. So that was something that was a hard lesson. It took me a couple of years to get there to learn that one, but it was key. So the guy never thought to mention, he probably assumed I knew. You know, it's obvious, isn't it? You know, so.
Well, just put more compost on it. Like, we don't need any more food. We need to get the babies out of here. You know?
That's right. And so you go through, and the egg sacs are obvious. They're like little bean-shaped thingies, you know, and you pluck them off, and you put them somewhere and mash them up, and that's the fertilizer, and let that, you know, soak in water, and woo, there you go. So anyway, live and learn, and get started, and enjoy your mistakes. Godspeed. So we have a few West Coast earthquakes and a warning about the new Madrid. You know, because that's right around the corner, and I mean this year, according to Zeta predictions, and I'll get to that. Let me rattle this off. The west coast of the U.S. seems beset with quakes. This started with a magnitude 6.5 along the Walker Lane fault line in Nevada on May 15th, the largest on the globe on that day. It was huge. Highways were torn apart, such was the jolt. Dozens of major aftershocks occurred. This region is within the Great Basin, composed of salt flats that are very rigid. What would cause a Walker Lane fault line to explode? It is at the center of the North American bow tension, in the middle of the bow, and the New Madrid is directly east of this location. On May 16th, the next day, there was a 5.9 quake in Alberta, also well inland from the coast, so not due to any subduction of the Pacific Plate. If one considers the tip of Mexico and the Aleutian Islands to be the bow tips, then the center of the North American bowl is being crunched. On May 19th, several quakes occurred at the juncture of the Pacific and Juan de Fuca plates, again in the relative center of the bowl. Still on the continental plate, though these quakes were out under the ocean, but the crunching and pressure were moving inland. On May 20th, flooding around the Saginaw Bay in Michigan hit the news. They did have 4 to 7 inches of rain, but video showed that the rivers were flooded both up and downstream from the dams. In the opinion of the Zetas, this was not dam failure, but heaving and land blocking the outlet of water into the Saginaw Bay. And we had that heaving also in Kansas a few months back, and due to the New Madrid tension. In 2010, the Zetas warned that preceding the New Madrid adjustment, there would be, and I quote, "We have warned that quakes on the West Coast or the Seaway or in the New Madrid region will occur before the major quake on the New Madrid region. We have referred to the adjustments on a 7 to 10 level, plate adjustments 7 to 10. There will be quakes in these areas magnitude 4 to 7, which should not be considered the New Madrid adjustment of which we speak." In other words, they said these West Coast quakes would occur before the biggie, which is going to drop Chicago into its basements, rip all the Mississippi bridges, ring bells in Boston. I mean, it's going to be serious. And you think that these riots we're having now, just wait, and it's coming this year. Breaking this down, between May 15th to 19th, we have had quakes on the West Coast. On May 20th, we had heaving at the Seaway in Michigan, because they said Seaway too. And for the past year, we have had almost daily small quakes in the New Madrid region. For this region, I take the West Coast quakes to be very significant. Likewise, the Zeta stated we should watch the tip of Mexico, as this would be the trigger for a New Madrid adjustment. Between May 22nd to 24th, this area has 7 quakes ranging from 4.2 to 6.1. In the opinion of the Zetas, and quoting Zeta Talk on November 30th, 2019, a year ago, not even a year ago, the New Madrid adjustment will be triggered by the push against the tip of Mexico. Prior to the event, we have termed the Big New Madrid Rip, where the fault line unzips toward the Great Lakes, and under the Seaway, there will be increasing disasters throughout North America. They're saying this is to be expected. The Zetas warned that the New Madrid adjustment is close and will happen before the end of 2020. I will repeat, before the end of 2020. Before the time in January 2021 when the establishment can no longer deny the presence of Nibiru, and we're pretty close there too. Quoting Zeta Talk from March 2019, "Is there such a worldwide program that has a deadline of 2021? Every country has one, and that's what heads of state have been told to expect. You got to fess up about Nibiru now, before that January. They have been told via face-to-face meetings between heads of state that this is the year when Nibiru will be close enough that denial is no longer feasible." So basically, they are saying that we are going to have the New Madrid adjustment this year. And that's their words, so take it or leave it. Of course, they have been wrong before. It could be, the Council of Worlds can step in, slow things down and all that. But get ready for your home gardens. That's our point,
Yes.
And all the riots and everything that are going on, look upon that, and from the standpoint that many places around the globe realize that their people are going to be aware of Nibiru very soon and likely to riot. And they want to call martial law. They want to in these countries because they loved it when the pandemic allowed them to shut everybody down. Stay in the house. Stay in the house now. Just homeschool and be good.
Safer at home.
It's safer at home. It's also safer for the governments who want to control the populace, that type of thing. If it's time for you to go out and help the farmers harvest, go to your room. We'll come and pick you up, and we'll take you out to the harvest field, and you can help the farmer harvest. And don't forget your mask. They loved that, and they would like to stay there, so that there's lots of reasons for the rioting we're seeing, but this is one of them. This is part of it, and for your family, get going, and don't forget those baby chicks. Because someone told me that they're seeing a lot of drive down the road and they see a lot of families that have little baby chicks in their yard, and the kids are out there playing with them. And because the hatchery said they ran out of baby chicks, and I've heard people say that they couldn't get seeds. They tried to get seeds via the internet, and these